WordPress and website hosting is a pretty complex topic. It used to be, back in the 90s when I started trying to create websites and put them up on the internet. I was fascinated as a visual artist. I was a sculpture major and did a lot of pen and ink drawings in college and growing up. I was fascinated when the internet was new, about putting websites up so that the world could view them. It's still so interesting to me to, and it feels really good to put up a fresh new WordPress site, to spend some time playing with designs like themes and builders and page builders, and kind of put together some ideas. And then you take that live at a WordPress or website host, and all of a sudden it's visible to the world if they can find it, right? You can share that with others. Being fascinated with that in the 90s, I started with static websites. All websites were what you'd call static websites at the beginning. I was using a visual building tool, though, just like I do to this day within WordPress, with the Divi visual builder and the Gutenberg and the block editor. Now, those are visual editors. And I've never really, gone and made a website from scratch with code like HTML and CSS code. And to me, that's a smart move, because leveraging what other people have done as far as WordPress themes, and in the past, a software like Adobe Go Live, which turned into Adobe Dreamweaver, which still exists to make static sites in a visual way. That's where I started, and I was fascinated. My roommate and I at the time in Breckenridge, Colorado, just over the Continental Divide from where I am now, we started a little business called SiteAssist.net, making websites for people we knew in ski school. I've spent 25 years teaching snowboarding and skiing to people at the ski resort, and I'm now since retired for 5 years from that, with my lifetime season pass for my wife Erica and I, which is really awesome. But anyway, I remember times, sitting in our little condo with my roommate Jeff, and creating websites with Adobe Go Live, and figuring out at a company called bulkregister.net that we could register domain names for people. We could put websites that we created with Adobe Go Live up on those hosting areas. And then we could pay for that, in bulk, you might say. And then for each of our customers, they would pay us a little bit. And all of a sudden, our hosting became free. And then our hosting turned into a profitable endeavor. And we ran that business together for several years, until Jeff moved away from the mountains, finally out to Oregon. His wife became a doctor. And in any case, I kept on with website building and making sites for clients. In 2006, I found WordPress. And that's the reason I'm saying all this, is that there kind of is a big difference between a static website and a dynamic website. And I'm going to talk right now. I'm just going to illustrate. If you look at the screen right now, this is kind of the system that happens when we have a WordPress website, and really how it works in the background. This is just a good foundational piece of knowledge that you guys should understand if you don't already, if you're looking to host and serve clients with websites. So if you look over here on the right, this is the user's browser, right? Chrome or Safari if you're on a Mac, or used to be Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge. The browser's open on your computer. If your computer has Wi-Fi, you're connected to the internet, you'll be able to type in a domain URL into your browser, and that domain URL goes to some other places out on the internet. The Internic domain name registry is connected to companies like Cloudflare and GoDaddy, where you'd register your domain names. And the domain name system called DNS stands for Domain Name System. It translates the domain, human understandable URLs into IP addresses. IP addresses, there's things you may have seen, there's a set of 4, 2 or 3 digit numbers separated by a dot in between. An IP address is really the real location of the server. Now, a server, this is where the website would be located. A server is actually a physical piece of hardware, a computer that's connected with a very fast connection to the internet, and is probably sitting in an industrial building, in an industrial park, on server racks, black boxes stacked on each other, on racks with probably an air-conditioned environment, keeping it very cool. You might have, a cooling floor in the whole thing, but you need a server in order to host a website. And so when you buy space or hosting and a hosting account with a hosting company, what you're doing is you're basically renting a section of a server. You can get a server that's all your own, and if you just have one site on one server, that's called a dedicated server. And what we generally work with, in all the hosting companies, including small hosts where you can get very inexpensive hosting, where you call that shared hosting. I'll talk about the different types of hosting, and as I indicated before, the 3 types of hosting that are really out there. There's shared hosting. You're basically sharing the space on one server with a number of different websites. Each of these being a website. Your website over here. All these shared websites on this server might have the same IP address. And what happens is when you put your domain URL into the browser, or Google points you to a domain URL, like I said, it translates into the IP address, and that IP address is connected to a particular server. And now there's software on the server. Software on the server is necessary so that when that browser goes to that IP address and it says, hey, I'm looking for, yourname.com, the server might have hundreds or 20s or thousands of websites on it, and it has to pick out the one that you're looking for. And so software on the server, that's what the hosting companies are really providing you. That provides that system. And so moving around the circle, the server. Let's talk about WordPress in particular as compared to a static website. WordPress is a dynamic website generator. It generates HTML and CSS. That's what the browser reads and can put out as, pictures and text and a layout with columns. The language that browsers use is, HTML, hypertext markup language, plus CSS is what designs that and makes it look good. And that's called cascading style sheets. And that's a style, styling the content. So the content in the HTML is called markup, and the CSS is called a style sheet. And those added together equal a website. And so what happens is this web page is created, and that web page is then delivered over to the browser, like I've indicated here over this arrow, the HTML and CSS. But what happens here at the hosting server? This is just important to know as background, and then we'll get on to kind of the meat of different hosting types. And for your particular situation, I'd love for you to come out in the end with an idea of what kind of hosting would be best for your situation. And so looking at that, on the server, we have kind of 2 things going on at the same time with the way WordPress works. And WordPress is a CMS. Of course, in this whole world, there are a lot of acronyms, right? That stand for HTML, CSS. An IP address is kind of an acronym. It's a series of numbers. So I just said another acronym, a CMS. CMS stands for a content management system. And the reason WordPress has, one of the reasons that it's blown up into running almost half of all the websites on the entire internet, is because it is a free and open source piece of software that enables an easy way to create a website paired with a content management system. You could think of WordPress as kind of 2 things. You have the front end of the website, that's what people see, and then you have the back end of the website, that is the WordPress dashboard, and where all the data and the content lives. And so the way WordPress works is it has 2 parts here. And so we'll talk about files there's, WordPress is actually just a series, excuse me, WordPress is just a series of PHP and JavaScript files, all in a row. And the server is able to read PHP and JavaScript and then translate it into HTML. And now it's not just PHP and JavaScript, however. Inside of the files, you also have your theme and your plugins that are within your WordPress site. Those are also built with PHP and JavaScript programming languages. Okay. And so you've got the files. Those are actual, they're an actual computer file, like a Word document is the file name .doc for document, right? This, JS files, their JavaScript files are .js. PHP is another programming language. Those files are something .php. And so the server is able to read those. However, the best thing about WordPress and what makes it a dynamic website generator is that you keep the design and the actual files separate from what's called a database, the content of the website. And so one type of database language is called MySQL or MySQL. Again, it is a free and open source piece of software that is used for managing data. It basically makes a huge spreadsheet that's readable by a computer so that the server, again, it can take the files and it can add them to the database, and then it combines them together to create the web page. Okay, that was kind of complicated and longer than I thought that would take to go through and look at, how WordPress works and, really how the internet works. It used to be, as I said, this is a dynamic website. A static website would just kind of eliminate this part right here, and you would create HTML and CSS as a file. You upload that to a server yourself, and then that's readable by the browser, but we have this server system with the two different parts that make WordPress what it is. And it really enables us as non-programmers to leverage the work of other people and customize themes and plugins, designs and page builders in WordPress for our own needs. And we can master that as a skill. And, it's arguable whether for what I'm doing, leveraging page builders and themes that other people have designed, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen just at the moment and come back to you guys. But am I a WordPress developer? Am I a website developer? Some people would call me an implementer, right? Somebody who takes the work of other people and then customizes it and implements it. And the result is a customized working website that I can provide and sell to a client, or that I can use in my own business. And so it almost doesn't matter, what we call ourselves. I would argue that I am developing websites, even if I'm not programming them with the language HTML or JavaScript and PHP from scratch. I am developing websites by leveraging things like themes and leveraging, of course, WordPress itself and plugins that I can find out there. And I think that's the smart way to go as a business owner, to instead of making things from scratch that other people have done in a very similar way, go ahead and leverage what they've done and get a head start, like standing on the shoulders of giants, that term. And so the whole idea here with, having a business, either creating websites for others or creating and managing websites for your own business, there's so much that's been already created. WordPress has developed into hosting, 50% of the sites on the internet, mainly because it's open source. Anybody can take that code for free and change it and build things for it. And that's why the community has grown so fast since 2003, when WordPress started from a tiny blogging software into what it is today. And so let's go, and I have another piece to share from my, let's see, let me share my screen. and we'll talk about hosting itself. I'm looking at my outline. If you see me look off the screen away from the camera, I'm looking at my content outline for today's workshop. And let's talk about 3 different kinds of hosting. I've taught a little bit about this before, and I'm going to go ahead and share my browser screen. And if you guys can see my screen where it says grid pane at the top left, can any of you wave at me if you can see that? You guys seeing that okay? Thank you. I see you, Linda. Thank you for waving. All right. Actually, there's 2 Lindas right at the top of my screen. Thanks. I appreciate that. So you're looking at my grid pane account here, and I'm going to actually go over to a shared WordPress host that I've used in the past, and I love this. I'll kind of share a few stories about how I have moved my client sites and my own sites to 4 different times from host to host for various reasons. I started out, like I'm sure many of you are or have, trying to find the least expensive full powered tool that I can use to host sites for client websites or to host my own sites. A lot of us go and look, and because of the price, we find hosting companies that offer shared hosting, right? And that is just, it's kind of a background term that we kind of throw around, but there's SiteGround has a number of different kinds of hosting. But where I started was where you might see WordPress hosting. I think I'm right here on the page right now talking about WordPress hosting from SiteGround. Now, SiteGround was the 3rd host that I moved, that I used for all of my client sites. And it was the 3rd shared host. I really didn't know what the server looked like in the background for any of the 3 hosts, including SiteGround, when I was hosting my client sites. I didn't know what the server specifications were, how many CPUs, what the RAM memory was, how much. I did know things like how much storage space I might have. Like, for instance, on this startup plan, you can host 1 website. They allow you to do that. You can have 10 gigs of web space, and they meter your number of visits. And if you exceed some of these metrics, they'll ask you to upgrade to the next plan, obviously. And so what they're doing is they're taking 1 server. If you remember the diagram with the little square that has a database and it has the files, that has to be hosted somewhere on a server. And hosting companies are taking 1 server, often we call that a box, the server box. They're taking a server and they are letting it be shared by multiple websites. And so the reason that you can get web hosting, for example, look at this, unlimited websites here for $4.99 a month. That's actually just an initial discount. If you look down here, if you buy that for the entire whole year and you pay for all 12 months, then it's $4.99 for a month for the first year. Oops, excuse me. And then it goes up to $25 a month. So this plan is really $25 a month for 20 gigs of web space. Now they say unlimited websites, and that's not really true. If you start putting hundreds of websites into this Grow Big account, somewhere around, I don't know how many, it depends how many visits you get. You're going to start to use too much of the resources on that 1 server, along with hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of websites that are sharing that 1 server in the background at SiteGround. And you'll be asked to move to the next plan. And, you can't really get the information about the server specs. That's hidden from you. And, shared hosting, let me back up a second. It's not hidden from you as like a bad business practice, or that they're trying to take advantage of the customers. The reason that it works this way is so that hosting doesn't cost a minimum of $100 a month or something like that for every single website. And so this is just an example of how a company like SiteGround, I've used Media Temple, and then I moved to Rackspace for website hosting, and then to SiteGround, started now to get my own server where I know the specs of the server, and I know, exactly what I'm paying for. When you expose that knowledge, the back end, the server specs, behind what you're doing, you can get a lot more for a lot less money. And it's actually only been the last few years, probably the last 5 years only, these companies that provide type 3, the third type. I broke my thumb. Sorry, I don't know if you could see that, but I can't make a 3 with my right hand. The three types of hosting, the third I'm going to talk about is self-managed hosting. And so right now we're talking about shared hosting. And I'd say if you're starting out, if you're looking for the lowest possible price, and of course you can always upgrade, shared hosting is a good way to go with one of the companies that's recommended. There's definitely a lot of shared hosts out there, and it's hard to find real information about hosting. Let me digress for a quick second, and just I'm going to go to another tab in my browser, and show you 2 sites that are related to each other. This one's called Review Signal, and I would write that down and check it out if you're looking at deciding about hosting. Review Signal is a site that has kind of it fixed a problem that had been building for years and years and years. The problem is that hosting companies oftentimes work with affiliate and review and referral ways of selling, where you could put up, somebody like me, I could put up a blog and I could review a web hosting company like, say, Known Host. I could put up a review for Known Host, and I could sign up for an affiliate or a referral account with Known Host, and I could put a special link on that blog post. So when someone reads my blog post and clicks that link, I would make $50 if they bought an account with Known Host. Now, at the beginning, if Known Host or any of these are selling a $5 hosting plan, they're losing money at the start there. But that's just like, at Walmart or other retail stores where they use a loss leader to bring someone into the store. They'll sell someone a product at a loss in order to bring them in the store, knowing that they're going to walk around in there and buy something at a profit. And so overall, it's a profit. But the problem with that system in the hosting world over the last 15, 10, 5 years, even it exists now. If you try to research website hosts, you're going to find a lot of affiliate links, and kind of fake reviews, where you're not really getting real information. It's pretty difficult to find true and honest reviews and information about hosts and hosting companies. And so as I had moved my hosts over, 10 years ago to 5 years ago, I really started using this Review Signal. And what they really started doing was they took real conversations from Twitter, and they've turned that into real, honest website hosting reviews. They collect real reviews from real people who are using these companies and posting on Twitter and other social networks. And then they publish them here, and they kind of crunch the data, and they give you info like this, where, this is basically for shared hosting. They've rated them as, they have probably thousands of ratings and reviews that they've put into their data set to come up with this sort of thing. And then, VPS stands for Virtual Private Server. That means that you can rent a part of a server, and even though there are other people renting a different part of that server, they're not connected. They're part of the same server, but you're sharing part of that. And so, VPS hosting providers, you may have heard of some. Hey, SiteGround is a VPS provider, but look at this. SiteGround is also a shared hosting provider. And so the second thing I wanted to do before we go back to the second kind of hosting, which is managed WordPress hosting, I wanted to go up and just show you this. If you're on Review Signal and you click at the top here, WordPress hosting benchmarks, this is where I really found Review Signal. This guy, Kevin Ohashi, put this all together. He has spent a lot of money on software to test the performance of the different WordPress hosts with a standardized kind of fake website where he'll put traffic, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of quote unquote visitors to a website all at once and test the performance of the hosting companies. And so each year he puts out this participating hosting company report. The hosting companies that participate, they need to provide a hosting environment of their own and volunteer and pay to be a part of this. But it is another great resource as far as third-party information. If you're researching hosting, these are the two best places I've found. So you can really go deeply in here. You can see here you've got for this year's test, WordPress, and then less than $25 a month, 25 to 50 gives you some, 51 to 100, etc. Enterprise sites, these are going to be like big sites, expensive website hosting companies that are, of course, 500 and thousands of dollars a month potentially. But one I wanted to point out, and I'll kind of return to this as I move towards self-managed hosting. You may have heard me talk about GridPane as my new favorite over the last 4 years of using GridPane for my hosting. This performant websites right here is a guy like me who has a developer account at GridPane, who sells hosting to his customers. Very similar to what I'm doing with Leverage WP hosting that I'm going to tell you about by the end of this training. But he has been performant websites is basically leveraging GridPane in order to get a very high score. This is just a lot of data about the tests and all that. But the ones that are listed in the blue boxes here and the ones that are starred are the best results. And so I just find it interesting that here's a person who put out he just started his own hosting company without having to really buy any server space or anything like that, but leveraging a company like GridPane that kind of reveals all the server specifications and is super 100% transparent about what's going on in the background. Anyway, I digress a little bit. Let's go back to the SiteGround site right here. We were talking about shared hosting. SiteGround is a great example of a place to start. There are a few others. I know, I'll just call out DreamHost. I haven't used myself. Bluehost, I've used just a little bit, and they're pretty good too. They're actually recommended. DreamHost and Bluehost are both recommended at WordPress.org. And so is SiteGround, I believe. But I do like SiteGround. They've been a great company. One of the things that I really looked for as far as when I was searching for new hosts is how's the support? Right? Am I able to get somebody in minutes to help me if I have an issue? And that's something that's really important. If you're not a system administrator or a computer science person knows what's going on, you may need some help if something goes wrong, if you mess up a website or something like that. SiteGround support has been excellent. GridPane support is excellent too. I'm also going to highly recommend Flywheel. Flywheel hosting is something I've recommended over the years. You guys may be familiar with. If you've been a part of my Udemy course, you know that I've recommended SiteGround, I've recommended Flywheel. I now recommend GridPane highly for almost all situations. But let's move on. Let's move to managed WordPress hosting. I've got the Flywheel homepage or pricing page up here just to talk about managed hosting. Now, managed hosting, the difference between shared hosting and managed hosting, it's funny, managed is a little bit of a misnomer because really all hosting except for dedicated hosting where one website is on one server, all website hosting is actually shared, right? So one of the reasons that I moved from a shared hosting account that was inexpensive, like SiteGround. When I moved from Rackspace over to SiteGround, I was interested in sharing my client websites with less other random people and random websites. What happened to me, I'll tell a quick story. What happened to me quickly, let me just go back and get my face on the screen again. Oops, I just need to stop the share. One of the things that happened to me was that I was hosting at the time about 30 client websites at Rackspace. And one of the things that's very common with the lower cost hosting companies, the shared hosting companies, is that they include other services like domain registration and like email hosting as a part of their offerings, right? And one of the things that they get out of this is that you're kind of with everything bundled in, you've got a little bit of this lock-in problem. You've got your domain registered with SiteGround, you have email, and your email accounts are there, and the emails are all saved on the server, and your website is hosted there. And so it just makes it harder to move. Now, of course, it's convenient for the customer. So there's a little bit of benefit for having everything in one place, but it's not currently a best practice when you're hosting a website to host your email on the same server as that website. And it's also not a best practice to host or register your domain names at the same place that you have your website hosted. It's kind of like a single point of failure right there, right? If one thing goes wrong, everything is down potentially. And so let me get back to my story. I had about 30 websites at Rackspace, and I was hosting everyone's emails, as a part of the hosting, because it's part of my hosting offerings. And of course, I didn't have to pay anything extra for hosting my clients' email addresses, like their name at their company website.com. You need to do that if you want to be a professional business, of course. And so here's what happened. At one point, of course, middle of the night while I'm sleeping, one of the email boxes of one of my client sites filled up to its quota. And I wasn't aware that this could possibly happen, but once that filled up to its quota, the server stopped working. The server had a glitch where it had exceeded its quota of resources available. And what happened was that all 29 other sites also went down. So not only did the person couldn't receive or send email, but all of my client sites were down all at once. Now, of course, Rackspace has excellent support. And as soon as I woke up and I had emergency emails from clients, I was panicking and getting on the chat and on the computer with Rackspace, and they were able to figure out right away and get all the sites up by just increasing the quota on that email box. But what you really want when you're hosting multiple websites is to get it to a point that I would call set it and forget it, or as close as you can to set it and forget it is what you want. You want to have automated monitoring so that if anything were to happen, you are the first to know. It's really not a fun feeling when your client calls and says, "Hey, did you know my website's down?" That is the worst, because you're like, "Oh, thanks for telling me. I feel so terrible. Oh, let me figure it out." It hasn't happened to me very much, but that was one example. And I learned at that point that it's a best practice not to have a single point of failure in any single place in the system. So I know that I'll do other workshops, and I actually have trainings at the Leverage WordPress website, as well as on the YouTube channel, about hosting email separate from the website, at the domain name. And separating those things so there's not a single point of failure. So let me go back and share my screen again, and we'll talk about managed WordPress hosting. So here we are back at WordPress hosting plans at Flywheel. Flywheel was, some years ago, one of the fast-growing companies that started to offer, like a full service program for people that wanted to host WordPress websites with no hassle, with, kind of everything is taken care of, including having the no single point of failure process as a best practice, and having a high amount of resources that are scalable. Should you get a viral blog post or something like that, all of a sudden you have a ton of website visitors. They have it set up so that it can scale in case of that problem instead of just going down. And so Flywheel and other companies like WP Engine, there's a few more. Kinsta, starts with a K, is a great managed WordPress hosts. Now you might, it's believable that these plans are more expensive than a shared hosting plan. But like I said, even virtual private hosting like this, managed WordPress hosting, is also shared. If you wanted to know who else is sharing the hardware, the server hardware with you on here, and if you wanted to know the specs, the specifications of the server at your Flywheel site and your Flywheel hosting plan, you can't know that. They will not tell you that. In fact, even the support people don't know the resources that you're using. All they know are what the plans include. What you've got is they track things just like the shared WordPress hosting companies. They'll give you for a single site called Tiny, $15 a month, not like $3 a month like you could get at shared hosting back at SiteGround. Let's go back there for a quick second. Startup for a single site, $3 a month. If you pay for the year, well, then it goes to 15. And I would argue that if you're going to start out for the lowest cost you can get, I would recommend skipping shared hosting and going straight to managed hosting. And I would recommend Flywheel. As a managed host, they have the lowest price for a single site that I've ever found, that I've found yet. So I did move all my client sites from my SiteGround cloud hosting, not one of these plans right here at SiteGround, but if I go over hosting and go over to cloud hosting is very similar to, sort of like GridPane, where you actually do get to know how big your server is, how much storage, how much data they allow you to transfer back and forth between the server and the users every month. And of course you can upgrade if needed. But you can't really, move sites between different servers or do a lot of things that I'll explain in just a little bit here with self-managed hosting that GridPane offers. In any case, with $100 a month plan, mine was actually a little bigger than this at $120 a month. I was able to fit all of my client websites on there, almost 50 websites. However, I was able to go to, for some of my websites, especially the ones that wanted higher performance, ones that had an e-commerce store or that had sort of what they would call mission critical websites, they were able to pay more for closer level, a higher level of care that I would provide, and therefore I upgraded their hosting. So I moved some of my clients from SiteGround Cloud over to a freelance plan that allowed me to have 10 sites for $115 a month. At the time, it was $100 a month. I think if you go annual, it's about $100 a month with the annual plan. But that ends up being about $10 a month per site, and you get. It's still shared though. You get to, you're combining all of your visits between all 10 sites to equal 100,000. And so if one site kind of accelerates and takes up all the space, the other sites don't have anything left over potentially. And that's where you get into a situation potentially where if one of your sites grows and gets large, your only option is to move up in more than double, almost, 3 times the price. To the next plan up. Now, managed hosting does have its benefits. It's super convenient for you and me, for the user, to be able to provide hosting for our sites, for client sites. It's super fast. They have excellent support. They know everything about WordPress there is to know. And one of the things that I like about Flywheel, I didn't use myself, But they've added in the last couple of years is something called Growth Suite, where it's really, if you want kind of everything done for you and set up on your behalf, including client billing and site management and revenue insights, all on top of their WordPress custom software on the server, the Growth Suite plans are pretty sweet. A little more expensive, $135 a month for 10 sites. But what it gives you is, you don't have to set up WooCommerce on your own website in order to take credit cards for your client sites. It's really all connected. And so I would highly recommend, if you're someone that's like, I don't even want to DIY it. I don't want to do it yourself. I'll pay a little more, but I want to sign up for a thing where it will take me, I don't know, 3 or 4 clients to get this paid for, but then client 5 and 6 up to 30 is profit. And I don't have to deal with anything. It's just like, it's software as a service, right? This is paying for some software that they've made that leverages WordPress. And I really encourage you to do this if that is the kind of the kind of service you're looking for. It's easy. Here's an example. This is my old Flywheel account. I no longer have that freelancer account on there, but and you guys have probably experienced this potentially if you've gone through any of my courses. You create a site, you just click the button. It's so easy. It's like, who's going to pay for it? Well, you could pass the billing on to the client, or you can have it in your organization if you're part of that growth suite like I talked about. But right now I don't have a site in here, but I could just click create a demo site, go in here, and it wants the site name, a temporary name to start, and then I could just create it. It'll just take a minute or 5 minutes, and I have a site that I can build, and then I have 14 days to do it. But I can do that. You can do that for free at Flywheel anytime you want to, if you want to check out the program. At leveragewp.com, there's a resources page. Here's the Leverage WP website, but on this resources page, there's just this is resources for the Udemy course, but also for just everyone else. There's these are the sandboxes, the course hosting environments. If you sign up to Flywheel with this link, you get 60 days instead of 14 days. That's why I opened it up and wanted to show you. These are some of the files that we use in the course you could import. And you can see I have GridPane, Flywheel, and SiteGround here as recommended hosts. And then, of course, there's Divi, which I enjoy building with, as well as Cadence, more the block editor there. But that's just a good resource there at leveragewp.com. But let's talk about the third type of hosting. Let me go to GridPane here. The GridPane homepage looks like this. It is a platform to build a WordPress hosting and care plan service. So GridPane is not aimed really at serving the single site customer. It's more expensive than, say, Flywheel for a single site, and more expensive than something like SiteGround, which costs about the same as Flywheel anyway for a single site in the long run. But GridPane can be leveraged for multiple sites in a very economical way, the most affordable way, if you're planning to or you're already hosting multiple websites. And like I said, there's transparency there. Right. The GridPane offers connections with all these server providers that my mouse is pointing at here: DigitalOcean, Vultr, UpCloud and Vultr are 2 that I use, as well as another one. And you can read about who they are and what they do here at gridpane.com. But if you look inside of my GridPane account here, I've got different kinds of servers that I can just spin up. If I go to UpCloud, for example, I need a new server. Okay, I choose I'm connected to UpCloud, and I pay UpCloud separately for these servers. But then I know exactly, what I'm getting. I just wanted to show you how this would work. I'm not going to buy a new server here, but say I wanted. I've got some UK clients. I wanted a server in London. Now I can look at the plans, and now I can choose the size that I want. Let's talk about this just a quick second here. by exposing the server provider, you are gaining that transparency. So I might choose as a starting point, the $20 a month, 4 GB RAM server is a good place to fit between 30 to 50 WordPress websites easily. Now you can imagine if you've got 50 WordPress websites, you're talking about, for that fee, you're only paying 50 cents a month or something for each of those websites. Now, of course, the GridPane software stack is what they provide, and they put it onto the server for you. And so if you look back, say at Flywheel for managed hosting, this tiny site, Flywheel doesn't own any servers. They are leveraging the power of knowing the server provider. They put servers on DigitalOcean. Google Cloud Compute is a server provider that SiteGround uses exclusively for the cloud, for the shared hosting programs that they have. And so you're kind of skipping the middleman in a way. When you go to here's a company, here's DigitalOcean, a server provider that GridPane connects natively to, say a 4 GB for $24 right here. Here's Vultr. The Vultr they're a little bit more, a lot of people like Vultr because they have these, what's called high frequency CPU. They have stronger processing units in the servers. And so for a 4 CPU, you're looking at, or what is it? Not 4 CPU, but 4 GB of RAM, $24 a month. And UpCloud is a company that I use. Here's the UpCloud pricing. Similar, very similar. For 4 gigs of RAM memory, $20. Just like we looked at the GridPane, my account right here in GridPane. And so it's GridPane's knowledge base as well. And this is an article that I'll show you guys as we talk about a little bit of specifics about kind of what to look for and what the other hosting companies kind of hide from you or don't tell you about your hosting background. The knowledge base here at GridPane, if you could just go to GridPane and then click knowledge base, it is full of so much educational material about understanding this stuff. But it's advised that if you kind of can fit 10 websites for every gigabyte of RAM memory on a server. And so that's why they and I recommend 30 to 50 websites on a 4 GB server, right? And so if you look at what I have in my account below here, these are my active servers. John, being a hosting customer who's on this call, has a server here. I have an OVH. This is just a hosting company, an infrastructure provider that has servers all over the world. OVH is where I host the Leverage WP sandboxes like leveragedivi.com, leveragewpsandbox.com, as well as the community and all my Leverage WP associated websites. It's a dedicated server that I could put all of just my own websites on. And then I have community websites. If you're a member of the Leverage WP community, you get a free website as part of that. And I host that here with, at this UpCloud Community One. Now, as soon as I have about 20 websites on Community One, all I have to do is go up here and create another one called Community 2. Or whatever I want, if I spell it correctly. And then I'll start putting community sites on there. And while being able to do that, that's why it's called self-managed, because I am able to look at the server infrastructure and know exactly what power I have at each server. And, here is something really cool too. If I go to, say, one of my servers where I host client sites, if I go over to stats right here, we have a thing called Monit. It's a monitoring service where I can look at what's happening at the server. So like stuff like the load on the server itself, what percentage of power in my CPU and what memory. It's really the memory that I look at and I'll check up on. Once this server starts to get close to 50 to 75% of its power, then I'll know, okay, don't put any more sites on that server. Go get another server and start putting new sites on that server. And like I said, instead of upgrading the plan, like this is the big difference. Instead of saying, oh, you're at 10 sites, your 11th site, you're going to have to upgrade 3 times the cost now. And I only need 1 more site. Well, that's not it's like I have to prepay for all that stuff. Back at GridPane, all I have to do is when this gets a little bit, up to half or 3/4 of the way full, I'll say, okay, all I have to do is go up here and add 1 more server at a price of $20, not a price of $200 per month more. And then I can add another 30 to 50 sites. Now, you wouldn't want to go with a 1 gigabyte. You can see there's a little warning right here. If you, is it going to tell me? We don't recommend using less than 2 gig RAM on a server. That's because GridPane is providing you with a software stack that does all these things that I'm going to show you here right now, and that you can take advantage of if you're a GridPane customer, or hint, hint, if you are a leveraged WP hosting customer, I can give you access to a full GridPane account at much less than what GridPane charges, because I'm a partner with them. If you look at pricing at GridPane, what I'd recommend that includes all the things that you would want as far as hosting client sites is the developer account, $200 a month, or 24, it's billed annually. And if you want to pay per month, you get a site limit of 200 sites total. But with, hint, hint, leverage WP, I offer this currently right now for $100 a month, or $1,000 for the year, where you get 2 months for free. But in any case, I digress. If I go back to my account here, that's why the GridPane is offering us all this software that they have optimized for WordPress, and that's what makes it a super high performance software stack on the server, so that it can run WordPress very, very high performance. If we go back over to review signal benchmarks, for expensive hosting, here is a GridPane developer account powered website company that's competing with companies like WordPress VIP. Those websites start for $2,000 a month for a single website. Press Labs is in that range. All of these are in that range of thousands of dollars per month for this type of server resources. And just saying that to say that the power that GridPane can provide without hiding the server specs is a really cool thing. Really super awesome. There's not many companies doing the same thing that GridPane is doing here. There are a couple. One is called SpinUp WP that I've tested extensively, and then decided on GridPane for a few different reasons, one of which being extremely excellent support from GridPane on WordPress and on managing the server, advice for what kind of server to use for what kind of site, etc. Another thing that you can do, lastly, before I kind of give you my tour of GridPane hosting here, is you can use let's see, am I on the servers page? Yeah, let me just close this. And you can use a server for a single website, which would be a truly dedicated server, not shared at all. And so if you have, a highly dynamic website, meaning people need to be logged in every page that people go to, say an e-commerce site where you have a shopping cart, and you have people logging in, or a membership site like the community, the Leverage WP community, an LMS or a learning management site, whereas people work through the courses, they need to be logged in. Those are dynamically generated pages every single time when somebody opens a new page. And those types of sites need higher performance. That is why if you look at, say, was it Flywheel, or let's see. Anyway, I was looking somewhere where I was seeing, it costs more to host a WooCommerce or e-commerce site than it does to host a regular WordPress site, And so, again, I digress a little bit, but it's very possible here to just kind of spin up a server for a single site, and even look at say a $10 a month server. If you looked at a 2 gig server for $10 a month for a single site, that site, I mean, that, that's a very powerful server. You might be able to put 10 small sites, 10 kind of regular sites on there, or a single WooCommerce e-commerce site or a membership site or something like that. And to expand and scale, again, you don't have to expand to the next plan that the hosting company is telling you and offering you while hiding the background, what is actually happening in the background in the server specs. And so, as we move on here just a little bit, let me show you around. Here's just as an example, I just clicked sites at the top. If I wanted to add a new site, it's as simple as, saying GSD website, those are my initials, .com. I select what server I need to spin up or buy access to a server first in order to put one on there. But if I wanted to put a site on my dedicated server, I would just, auto create a new user. A user is just something in the background that you would use for accessing the files and the database, so that each site you have here is private, and I should also say that you can offer hosting access to the site itself to clients when you're using GridPane like this, so that they can control things like their domain names or other things like that. You just, choose some different options here. I would put, this is a security, server level security, caching at the server level. I'm not going to explain all these technical things in this workshop, but just know that it's much better for things like server caching and WAF or web application firewall for security. It's much better to integrate those at the server level than it is to use endpoint security, it's called, or endpoint caching, meaning you're using a plugin on your WordPress site to do your caching instead of having that at the server level. Caching means that WordPress can create the dynamic HTML page once and then saves that version of it on the server. And then every time someone browses to that page, they don't even have to hit the database or use the server resources at all. The server just says, oh, we cached a version. We have the latest version of this page already. Just give it to the user. And so caching is a really important thing to always have in place on all of your websites. And that's where I was talking about with WooCommerce, for example, checkout pages, or anywhere where someone needs to be logged into the website. Those can't use caching because you can't just save a version of a page. It wouldn't know who's logged in. And so that has to be dynamically generated every time. That's where you want to have, for those type of websites, a more powerful server or more resources on the server to be able to power that. This is for email, for just outgoing email. Now, this isn't for an email address. This is for mail transfer protocol. Simple mail transfer protocol is what SMTP stands for. But I have my SendGrid, free SendGrid account connected to GridPane so that when someone fills out a contact form, or if somebody forgets their password in WordPress to log in, they'll be able to get and receive an email from the WordPress site. That's called transactional email. If you've gone through any of my courses, you should know about the 3 types of email. Transactional email is something that the website sends automatically to one person. Anyway, that can be set up. Of course, you want your websites running on HTTPS. To have the little padlock symbol up in the address bar, and GridPane sets that up automatically, and you can connect to your Cloudflare account for the domain name service integration. Again, a very important part of being able to serve websites really, really fast is to take control of your DNS. Use a company like Cloudflare to serve your DNS services. I'm not going to get really technical about it here, but it makes your websites load faster and makes it easy to move your websites around without having to wait 24 hours for the domain name change to happen before anybody sees the new website. by using that, you can make changes on your website or even migrate your website with no downtime, meaning your website stays up and live. Nobody ever knew anything was different, but you can move your sites all around. I'm not going to actually create this site right now. It's just an example of how easy it is. All I would do is, if I wanted to have a staging site like staging.gsdwebsite.com, I can check that box and it will create that on the server for me as well. And I would just click add site here. So let me just close this and let's take a look at a site that I already have created. These are all client and community sites. Let's just look at greggdavis.com, shall we? I just have a personal site I don't really do anything with. It has my Instagram feed on it. It has a page about web design, but I got my own name. So I was able to win that about 10, maybe 12 or 15 years ago now, where I have my own email addresses there, But in any case, here's the control panel for a single website inside of GridPane. You can see there's all these tabs across the top. This is the kind of control panel that you'll also get if you're a leveraged WP hosting customer. You'll just get all the things. It's like having your own GridPane account. But general settings as far as I had the SMT provider I told you about. I don't have that set at Gregg Davis because I'm using just a different outgoing email provider, Amazon Simple Email Service. I've taught again about that on the YouTube channel and in the accelerator course as well about increasing your email services using Amazon, which is a great thing to do. The caching, server level caching is super important for serving websites really fast. Object caching, again, I'm not going to go into the details here, but just know it's all available here. A security web application firewall so that you just don't get a bunch of, login attacks on your website. It prevents that from happening. The type of PHP that you're running on your website and the way that PHP works is changeable here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how, what is the smart thing to do as far as what type of website do you have? And I mentioned something called PHP Workers, and I showed this little article at gridpane.com at their blog about PHP Workers and WordPress performance. And this kind of we're gonna just go over this as kind of a final piece of info in a few minutes, but you can control that within WordPress. This isn't something that you can take control of at any other hosts. No shared hosts, no managed WordPress hosts like Kinsta, WP Engine, Pagely, or Flywheel. They do not let you control the PHP workers or the dynamically generated processes that happen on the website and control those. And so you can run into problems where the only recourse you have to fix your website is to upgrade to the next plan. And that's something I wanted to avoid and why I've gone this route, and why I want to offer it to all you guys in the community here too. This is one really big thing. As far as backups of your website, you want to have redundant backups. I prefer to have 3 easily restorable backups taken periodically for every website that I host. That's part of the set it and forget it process, right? I have local backups activated on greggdavis.com. Every hour at 10 minutes after the hour, it takes a backup of my site and saves it in a very, very high performance, small file size format. And it's easily restorable, right? So I could be like, okay, oh my gosh, my site's down. Somebody hacked it, whatever. I can just go here to restore. I could be like, what's my source local? Okay. Where I want to restore from that source. And what is the backup I want? I look at the date and the time, and GridPane saves for me, a whole day of hourly backups, a whole week of daily backups, a whole month of weekly backups, and a whole year of monthly backups. And it automatically cleans out the old backups all the time off my server. And it's just something that gives me comfort, right? I can take a deep breath and go, I know that anytime anything ever happens, I have an easily restorable backup. This isn't something I have on my little Gregg Davis site, but you can also have remote backups where you take this. Oh, I have to turn that on elsewhere to do it, but I could connect this to my Dropbox account and then add that remote storage here. I guess I have to do this first and then I can turn it on. And that's my number 2. This is what I do for all my client sites. So I have, again, a restorable backup available. The remote backups I do every day, from the GridPane account. And then if I were to log into greggdavis.com, I also use an endpoint backup system. I like using the free plugin Updraft Plus. Updraft Plus is a great WordPress plugin that you can set a schedule to save a weekly backup to your Dropbox or to the computer, or you want to have at least one remote backup that's not on the same server as your website. Because if the server were to all go down, like this local backups, that's where that's saved. For example, say the server building caught on fire and it burned down, right, where my website was. My local backups would also burn down, right? So in addition to that, you definitely want to have a remote backup system as well. I like to have 2 remote backup systems and 1 local backup system. All of them easily restorable with basically 1 click to any of the versions that I have in the background. And you should be able to do that almost for free. I do have a paid Dropbox account, but even in a free Dropbox account, you can have the remote backups go there. And when it puts a new one up, it deletes the old one. So you don't really fill up your space or anything like that. I like to save 2 weekly backups from Updraft Plus. Anyway, I went on a little bit there, but here is one of the best things that I love about GridPane, the cloning system. You can clone your sites to different places. You can clone them to the same site to a different server. You can take an existing site from that you have and make it a new domain name and put it on the same or a different server. And you can clone over an existing site. So, I could say I want to choose that site, and then I want to put it on this other site. This Gregg Davis, I'm just going to clone it to this domain name. And GridPane's software takes care of all of that. And this is in addition to the staging that you can have within GridPane, which I'll show you about next. But you can also clone whole servers from one server to the next. We'll talk about two more things. On domain names, you can have alternate alias domain names. Like if I had another domain name, which was, maybe I had greggsdavis.com, I could choose this to be an alias, meaning that when, I could basically put in my DNS, and what it'll do is when someone goes to that domain name, it'll basically just redirect them. It'll be this site instead. It's easy to work with domain names and that sort of thing. If you really want to get into troubleshooting or anything like that, you have access to all of these server logs, even the WP debug log, which can help you figure out like what plugin is conflicting, what these two plugins, what plugin is conflicting with my theme, things like that. But let's go outside of greggdavis.com and let's just go up to staging. I want to show you guys about staging. And then I want to show you, I'm just looking at my outline here. I want to show you about staging, and I want to show you what snapshot failover is, which is a high-end advanced thing that really is only available at self-managed hosting at GridPane or at hosts that cost thousands of dollars a month to be able to have basically this is a mission critical type hosting that you could offer, that I offer to just my clients. A few clients are using this type of system. I'll tell you what that is later in just a second, but live to staging and staging to live. And so if I look at which sites of mine I have staging environments on, here's the greggdavis.com staging environment. So there's a website here at staging.greggdavis.com. As soon as I click this button, I can push the live site to a staging environment. An exact copy will be made. And I can choose, what do I want to do? All the files or just the database? No files, the complete database, like a partial push over there. Once I have that site, the staging site created, I can just go here and sign on, and it's as if I'm working with greggdavis.com, but greggdavis.com is live, in its real place, and I'm working at a copy. And then all I have to do when I've made my changes is to go here and click staging to live, and this will push the staging over to the live site seamlessly. This is what I mean by no downtime. One of the ways you have no downtime updates or site redesigns, or like safe updates where you're like, wow, I need to update. It's been 2 months since I've updated any plugins on this site. I don't want to update all the plugins and have the site break. So all you do is you make a staging copy, and then you update all your plugins, you do all your checks, you make sure the site looks good, and then you can do one of two things. You either click push staging to live, and you just make the copy go back to the live site, and then the new site is updated. Or oftentimes what I like to do is just use the staging as a testing area, and then I go back to the live site and I'll do those updates again, one at a time, checking the site in between to make sure nothing happens. And while I'm doing that, I also have my 3 different restorable backups in the background, and so don't do what they call cowboy coding, which is to be working on the live website, writing things, new code, installing new plugins without testing them first. And so GridPane makes it easy to do this, and so let me go and I'm going to change my share to the iPad again. Just give me one quick sec. I have to mirror the iPad again because it's been so long. I've been rambling on. Here we go. Now, the snapshot failover diagram, this is something that I created as a part of, was it the, just a diagram for snapshot failover when I was teaching this as a part of the accelerator program. But let me just explain this real quick as the last kind of very exclusive feature that hosting with GridPane or with Leverage WP can get you. This is something where, okay, let's look at the purple here first. There's a website at an IP address. So this is, you would call that server 1. And there's an exact copy right here at server 2 at a different IP address. Okay. And so this is more expensive to run, but this is something where you could charge a client. I would charge a client a minimum of $300 a month for a site that has snapshot failover enabled. And more along the lines of, especially if I'm going to be doing any kind of content additions, like creating a monthly blog post for the client, doing things like an SEO audit of the site and continuing to put up new content on a client site on a weekly or monthly basis. You should be charging more like $500 to $1,000 a month per site on that sort of thing. But in any case, you have to have 2 servers running for each website. Now, of course, on the server, you can have more than one website. You could have, you could have 6 or 8 or 20 websites on the server, all part of your snapshot failover system. And so the way that it works, failover means that most of the time, when someone goes to here, let me just scroll down just a little bit. When someone goes to the domain name, it goes to the DNS provider, and DNS says, okay, what's the IP address, right? The IP address is this one right here. Does it work? It checks. It goes, okay, your DNS provider says, does the site return a 200 code, which is the site is working, not a not found 400. That's not, or 500 is a server error. But if it and it does this in milliseconds, right, while you're waiting for the page to open. So it doesn't make your site load any slower. But the DNS system goes, okay, site 1, is it up? Great. Most of the time, you're going to be loading from server 1. But what snapshot failover does, and what GridPane does as far as connecting these 2, one to the next, and synchronizing them, is the beauty of it. And so what happens is, you have a whole server right here that is an exact copy of the server number 1, right? So here's 1 and here's 2. like I said, Cloudflare will say, once you have it set up through GridPane and everything, they're synchronized like every hour or every day. So if there's changes, they just automatically synchronize. What this means is that Cloudflare will say, all right, is the server up? If no, then it goes to server 2. If yes, it goes to server 1, or 1, I should say. And so I hope that made sense. Snapshot failover is a feature of GridPane that is available on the developer level and higher. I'm just going to go back to my screen, my computer screen, just after explaining that a little bit, and show you that, down, let's see, snapshot. Oh, yeah, I guess I don't have anything to show you as far as snapshot failover, except when I go to my servers page here, I've got UpCloud 2 and 3. And so all you do in GridPane settings is you set UpCloud 2 and UpCloud 3 as a pair of synchronized servers. And so that's where I put my snapshot failover customers. And it means that it is another technique to provide me with peace of mind and my clients with peace of mind. And like I like to call set it and forget it WordPress hosting. Now, of course, on every one of my sites, I should mention that, let me go over here and I didn't really plan on showing you guys this, but this service called Uptime Robot, I use the free service. I think you can have 50 sites monitored with the free Uptime Robot service. This is just an external service that pings, there it is, 50 monitors with 5-minute checks. So it pings your website every 5 minutes. And if it's down, it tells you. That's all it does. And it does that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And that helps with preventing your client from calling you and saying, hey, my website's down. And so use it. Use Uptime Robot. There are other services that can do that as well. The WPMUdev.org membership. That is something that I've had for a long time. I don't use their hub as much as far as this. They have hosting, they have a set of plugins, but they also do monitoring. And you can kind of manage all your WordPress websites in one place with WPMUdev. I should also add this while I'm at it. Sorry, more information for your notes. Managed WP. Managed WP is a great service. I don't look at it as often anymore since moving everything to GridPane, but Managed WP is, again, there's a free level where you can put an unlimited number of websites, and you get monitoring, you get bulk plugin and theme updates if you want to. And you could go in, when you log in, it'll show you a list of all of your sites. And it'll show you, oh, this, and this. These 5 sites all have plugins that are not updated, and you can update them all from one screen all at once. I've used that quite a bit over the years. So one last thing in GridPane, what I want to do is just talk about 360 preemptive support. This is something where in the agency account, and you can add it to developer for extra fees, is that, and actually I should tell you, Leverage WP Hosting is in the process of moving from developer over to a more expensive agency account. Agency starts at $1,500 a month for a GridPane account at that level. But one of the things that it includes is 360 preemptive support. And so it basically means that GridPane's staff, their server administrators, have their own server level monitoring in place. And what they'll do is they'll look at the server and the health of the server, similar to this Monet is a really kind of rudimentary look at the data of the different types of PHP that are running. Nginx is the server software that's on there. This is another open source software that's running, Ubuntu. What is it? It's got 2 CPU cores, 4 megabytes, or 4 gigs of memory, etc. Anyway, 360 preemptive that GridPane provides is something that what the idea is that they look at the server health and they look at all of your sites, and they will give you advice before any problems come to light and fix those for you or ask you what you want to do as far as that. So anyway, that's something that's going to be included in the future in Leverage WP hosting, the near future, hopefully, as we grow as a group. You know, the whole point of the Leverage WP community is so that we can pool our knowledge, and that members of the community can get in contact with me and kind of leverage what I've learned over the last 15, 20 years hosting WordPress websites and other websites, in my website design career. And the hosting is the same idea. If we can pool our resources into one place, we can, as a group, we can buy agency GridPane and get all these benefits for all of us. I just was on a call with Patrick, the CEO of GridPane. If you look at the GridPane homepage, oh, here, down on the right, that's Patrick right there. You can actually watch this little video of him introducing GridPane. He's a great guy. About 5 years ago, he started GridPane. GridPane just accepted a strategic investment from the parent company of WordPress, Automatic. So they're the same company, the same, private company, the same board and employees and CEO, and they're basically going to be able to execute their roadmap of new features for everyone way more quickly now, because they got a very large investment from the parent company of Automatic. So even, founders of WordPress, Matt Mullenweg and others, believe in what GridPane is doing. And so anyway, let me start to wrap up and finish by talking about PHP workers and the limitations that other hosts are kind of stuck with because of the business model. I don't want you to necessarily need to read this, but part of the problem with managed WordPress hosts, and that's shared hosts too, it's the way that they bill, the billing metrics, right? The PHP worker limitation is in particular a serious problem because this is built into their infrastructure. Now, this article right here, it's at the gridpane.com blog. If you search Google or search, look at the blog at GridPane, it's called PHP Workers and WordPress Performance. It's a pretty long article. It says at the top that it's a 31-minute read. But you'll learn a lot about WordPress hosting by just going through and reading this about these concepts. But the big idea that you can get around by going with a company like GridPane, where everything is transparent, is that you can get around this problem. So your plan, at a managed WordPress host like Flywheel, it includes a set of PHP workers and a limitation per site. But if you need to tweak your PHP workers for better performance, you just can't. You've hit your limit. Like I said before, the only thing you can do is to upgrade to the next plan higher. Even the support team, their hands are tied. They literally have no choice but to sell you a higher plan. There's no other solution just because of the way that their business is set up. The way that you buy resources as a part of their hosting system is that there are plans, and those plans are fixed and immutable. They can't be changed. Now, the difference here is that, you don't really have to know what PHP workers are, except to know that if you have multiple people come into your website at the same time, every single user that goes to WordPress and has to hit the database, for example, for a WooCommerce site, or if 100,000 people clicked, read your blog because it was shared on Twitter or something like that at the same time, every person that visits the website has one PHP worker, right? And generally, it isn't a problem. But when you get a lot of people going at once, the website can go down, and you can't fix that if you start to get a really popular website. The only thing you can do is spend more money. Now, of course, at GridPane, it's super easy to spin up a new server, right? If I wanted to go ahead and look at a new server like I showed you here, I could be like, oh my gosh, panic. I need to set up a new server. I could choose a location. I could go like this and go, new server. And once I set that up, I could go over to sites, and I could, or no, excuse me, I could go over into that site that's down, for example, and I can go to clone and I could say, clone this site over to the new server, please. And it'll put it over there and relief. Oh my God, okay, I got that handled. However, the site was down for a period of time. So there's two kind of super high-end exclusive features that even as a kind of low dollar consumer, I can access. One is what I just explained, the snapshot failover system. And the other is taking control of the PHP workers system so that, I just pay one price for access to, here it is. I just pay one price for access to GridPane, and then I have control of all my servers. I could have 2 servers, 10, I could have 100 servers, right? And I can service my clients with as close as I can get to set it and forget it as possible. Okay, so let me finish by just talking about, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen at the quick moment, and just so you could see me again, I hope. And while I open that up, let me, I've got a few chat messages that I want to get to. So let me go and kind of take questions sort of here at the end. But thank you. I see that there's some questions in there, and I will get to those before I finish here. But I wanted to talk about, what is your situation. Whatever your situation is, there's kind of a best place to go, and I sort of have 3. I keep looking away from the camera, as you can see. I have sort of 3 options, right? The first thing, I think that the best solution for a single small site, if you're just looking to have a WordPress site that you make and create yourself, that you want to manage in putting your best foot forward, there's kind of 2 options. Of course, you'll know which one that I would recommend would be join the Leverage WP community, because it comes with a GridPane hosted website. In the Leverage WP community, so far we're still under 100 members. When we get to 100, the price is going to go up. Right now, it's only $12.50 a month. It's $150 for the year, right? And that includes a hosted website by me. And so, not only do you get the hosted website and you have kind of someone to turn to for help, you have the whole community to turn to for help. And not only that, I'm just scrolling up into my notes to talk about software for what's called bundles in GridPane. Because you would be my client in that case, you can have access to all of the software that I use in my business that I've already paid for, like Divi and the Visual Builder. Also new page builders that are on the forefront called Bricks, and one called Oxygen. There's Cadence and Cadence Pro that I highly recommend. Even the free version of Cadence is excellent, but Cadence Blocks and Cadence Theme Pro is something that all my clients can gain access to. I have a new animation builder that fits into Bricks and Oxygen called Motion.page that I'm playing with. It's super fun, and I'm going to be teaching about that. All the WPMU dev plugins, the pro plugins, are available to my clients. Elementor Pro costs $1,000 or more for a certain number of sites. I have Elementor Pro available to clients, and Beaver Builder Pro, the paid version for that, as well as some other upgradable things like my CRM that I use, customer relationship manager called Autonomy, and WooFunnels for doing sales and landing pages. That you've gone through that system within my website on WooCommerce. But anyway, those are examples of, if you're going to do a single site, option 1, potentially join the community at Leverage WP, because you'll get a fully functional, very powerful hosted website there. Another option without joining the community would be the Flywheel single site called Tiny. $15 a month and you're off and running. That is a great option for just a place to get started. So option 2, multiple sites. if you want to host multiple sites for yourself or for clients, and you're on a budget, right? And I think we're kind of all on a budget. If you want to kind of start smaller, I might have recommended not long ago that you start out with, say, Flywheel freelance, at $115 a month for 10 sites, or even that you start. I used to recommend that you start with SiteGround, Go Geek, or Grow Big shared plans that I shared on my screen earlier. I don't recommend those anymore. There's better options for just a little bit more or the same amount of money. And I'll tell you what I'm reading here in my notes is that here, let me just show you real quick. I'll share my screen real quick for this next recommendation. Multiple sites on a budget. These two plans in GridPane, the core plan is free and you still have to pay for your server infrastructure, but you could get that $10 or $20 a month server set up with GridPane to get started. You could put 1, 2, 3. You could sell your first couple of hosting plans and website care plans to a client or two, and then upgrade to the next one up panel. Now you can kind of explore what it really means, these different levels with the free plan. A few things that a couple reasons why I wouldn't go for the core plan, but go ahead and get panel would be that, of course, you're limited for sites. You can only have 25 sites in the free GridPane plan. You don't get staging. Okay, so the staging system that I showed you within GridPane is not there, as well as that's really the main thing. There's one more big one, and it's the backups system. Hourly, local, and remote backups, like we went over, wouldn't be available in free. Now, those things are replaceable, though. If you wanted to DIY it a little bit more for the least expensive way, the core free plan allows you to have really powerful and super high performance websites. But of course, you don't have staging, you don't have backups. But you could attach Updraft Plus plugin as a remote backups system onto that. It wouldn't be redundant necessarily, but you could actually create 2 backups and save them in 2 different spots if you wanted to, using Updraft Plus. And then that's backups. As far as staging, you could set up your own manual staging system, where you basically take a copy of your site like a backup and you open it somewhere on your own computer, like using local or something like that. And so core, it can be doable, but it is the least expensive. It's just a little more work, Another thing is, if you go with core or with a cheaper version of GridPane, I'd highly recommend that you join the Leverage WP community anyway. Because that's where you would be able to be like, Greg, what did you say I could do manually? You mean I can set up? How do I set up Updraft Plus to go to 2 different spots, right? Inside of the community, where we've already been sharing a whole lot of stuff. And one of the big benefits with the community is that there's a private direct messaging straight to me. And so I'm in there every day answering public questions, of course, but anything that you need that's very, very specific, or, several times I've been able to go into a client's website, and as a guest administrator, they create an account in there. I go in there and figure some stuff out on their behalf. And so I'm fully willing to do that for community members. It's been really fun. If it becomes unsustainable, I'm just going to hire help, and continue to support the entire community with more WordPress experts. But I'm starting out on my own, and it's been really fun so far. Thirdly, the multiple sites, the best solution. As you might, imagine, I might share that, I have been alluding to and talking about would be the Leverage WordPress Hosting offer. I appreciate you guys listening and just listening to what this is and checking it out and letting me know if you have any questions about it. At leveragewordpress.com, I put 2 links up today. One goes to Leverage WP Hosting, the other goes to the community, and there's a sign up button on the community itself. But let's just look at what Leverage WP Hosting is. Like I said, I'm partnered with GridPane to be able to offer this. It's that developer level account, which at GridPane, is $200 a month, billed annually. So for $2,400, you can get access to that for a year for unlimited sites. If you do want to pay monthly, you're limited to 200 sites. In any case, what I'm doing over here at Leverage WP Hosting is that, of course, $2 a month per site means, if you got 20, 30, 40 sites, then it's the cost per site really starts to come down. But you can, here on the landing page, if you need just one site, you can click here, and that's where I recommend join the community only, because it comes with one site. Okay. But as we go up to the top here, Leverage WP Hosting, instead of, it would be $26.40 a year, honestly, because you have to pay for a $20 a month server as well. But for $1,000 for the year, or for $100 a month, of course, by going with 1,000, you're saving $200. You're getting 2 months free. I'm including the first $20 server in there. So you have the ability, when you sign up with Leverage WP Hosting, to host 30 to 50 websites for this price. And of course, an unlimited number of websites in your account. If you wanted to add a server after the fact, if you wanted to do snapshot failover and have 2 servers instead, or if you grow and you wanted to add a server because you need another server for all of your clients, well, then you fully have the ability to do that. And I just, add that server infrastructure on your behalf, and you can start to use it. And so what you are is my client inside of GridPane. And so you have the access to only your own servers, not anyone else's. And you can even give clients of yours access to their own hosting with a control panel that GridPane provides for you called the Client Portal. Here's a little bit about me, and how this is working. It's with the help of GridPane. I'm really appreciative of Patrick and everything. This, of course, if you hit Get Started Now, you could go and just sign up. I would recommend that if you have any questions, or if you're thinking about, you have an inkling on doing it, go ahead and sign up monthly and ask me your questions. You can always upgrade to yearly, and I'll just, prorate everything personally for you. But if here's some frequently asked questions, but if it makes sense for you instead to book a private conversation with me, this just goes to my Calendly link. You can just look. I got to set up my availability for the rest of the month here. But when you choose a day and a time, we could get on a Zoom real quick, and I can answer your questions. What I'd really like to do, the reason this is here is in case you need an assessment to see if this is right for your situation. Like I indicated, some of my recommendations are not Leverage WP Hosting. If your situation warrants going to something else, like a $3 a month sign up for $36 with SiteGround, then I'll fully recommend that for you. I'm not here to get anybody in if it's not right for you and your business. And so I would welcome, as soon as I get off the call today, I'm going to open up my schedule for the rest of the month. One of the things that I should say as we finish up is don't go it alone. The Leverage WP Hosting includes access to the community. And so if you're already a community member, thank you so much for being a founding member of the Leverage WP community here with me. And go ahead and contact me if you're a community member and you want to sign up for hosting, because I'll credit what you've already paid for the community towards your hosting bill. Okay. And so, I'm not trying to just have you guys pay twice or anything like that. This is what Leverage WP Hosting is. I'd appreciate it if you guys have any questions or anything like that. Here's a look at the community if you haven't been in here yet. Now, the homepage of the community is available to anyone just to look and check out. But of course, you can't do anything here if you're not logged in. But you can see, kind of what things that we're talking about. Tanya asked a question a little while ago, and I had some recommendations here. We've got some other conversations happening. Monique had a problem with her Divi site, and here I'm offering to log in as an admin and help her there. Oh, I posted a new YouTube video the other day where you can watch me in real time work on one of my client sites and revise the Divi design after the client and I had a conversation on the phone. And then I often recommend, videos and resource tutorials that I find that I think are excellent. Follow Lee Blue on YouTube if you haven't already. As far as building a easy to manage and profitable website design business and hosting and website care business, nothing better than what Lee advises as far as how to sell websites and client plans. It's not, instead of a race to the bottom as far as price, it's all about selling and indicating the value that you bring to that business and your potential client. Basically all of his clients are about $10,000 a year clients. So you don't need 100 clients a month. You need one, and service them great, and their business pays for it and they're profitable. Anyway, here's an example of some of the things that we do in the community. Up here on the right-hand side, I'm logged in right now, but the community itself, if you click the sign up button, if you're not logged in, there's just a little bit of overview about what the community is all about. Right now, until 100 members, I'm offering it at 100, and it's going to go up incrementally there until the ultimate price is going to be $300 per year for the community. Well worth it. That's $25 a month for all this access. And again, it includes your site, just as powerful, if not more powerful than a Flywheel $15 a month site. But I appreciate you guys being here. See you guys next time.